All right, we're back, and it's COMP2068, week 10, lesson 10, part 2. And last video we talked all about final project. That's coming up. Again, first part's due 2 weeks from now, your concept, and then the next part's due by the end. But I want to talk to you about a couple of other things, and how do you measure all this stuff out? We're doing the final project, but I want to be able to talk about almost like my kind of a web project overview, because I know you're doing stuff with Jarrett. I think Jarrett's actually getting you guys to do what you're doing all semester or something like that, and kind of put it together in a format, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to take a look at this one. I kind of put together this little slide, and this is more of a real world example of the stuff that I ask my teams to do, right, when it comes to the web projects that we build. And I've kind of broken it out into several phases, right? So why am I showing you this? Because I want you to think about this as you're going to be starting to do an estimate, right, of how long everything takes, if you think about it. And in the real world, we'd have things like your client interview, which we don't need right now. But requirements gathering is the stuff you should be starting to do now. Let's gather some requirements for my project, whatever project you choose. So let's start writing them down, right? And then let's get into some tech specs. What things do I know how to do? What things do I not know how to do? What are the things that I need to kind of put together? Those kind of things. And start marking down hours. How long will it take us to understand the requirements? Those kind of things. Talk about what's in scope and what's out of scope for a project with your team. Like, when you're doing the survey site, out of scope is like a survey that's just, very open, that you can do whatever you want in the survey. That's out of scope. What's in scope is the ability for you to do 1 or 2 different survey templates. In scope and out of scope. Stuff you're going to do and stuff you're definitely decided not going to do, right? For your project. And then start estimating. Come up with maybe for next week, what you guys want to come up with for yourselves is by next week, have a number, like a number of hours that you and your partners are going to be working on this project. Try and put together an estimate, and for yourself, it's a really good, kind of exercise for you to do, and try and figure out how long it's going to take. Now, I know we've done this before, right? We've done this kind of project estimation before, where you estimate how long your site's going to take. I know you're pretty good at doing that kind of stuff. Last time you were almost dead on, right? So there are some other people though who aren't great at it, like for example, because you've never done it before. So how do you know how long it's going to take? So you kind of guess, and you kind of make a guesstimation, and you say it's going to take about 1 hour or 2 hours for this part, or 1 hour or 2 hours for that part. Then what you do is you create a project timeline. So with your team, right? So you sit down and get together with your team, and you say, this project is going to take this many hours, as an example, and we're going to be producing this milestone in this date, this milestone at the other date, and kind of loosely hang the dates out there. And there's some really cool software out there that'll do it for you. One of them that's online, and there's a free version of it. It's called Teamwork, right? Teamwork, where you can get together and create a way of managing your project. It helps you actually finish your projects by managing them. The more you manage a project, especially if you schedule it, I'm of the mind, and I know this is a philosophy, but I'm of the mind, if you schedule it, it'll get done, right? If you don't schedule it, it'll never happen, right? So if you say, yeah, we'll get together next week, man, we'll talk about a project. No, right? We're going to get together on Tuesday at 3 o'clock for 2 hours. We're going to talk about our project. We're going to be in this room, and we're going to take a break at this time. Have a tight agenda in order for you to work with somebody else. That's the way you get it done. And even then, there's going to be distractors, right? Sometimes I'm the distractor. When I meet with my team, they're like, Tom, we don't want you to come, right? Because you're going to talk about other stuff. You're right. I do that. I ask stuff like, hey, Victoria, how you doing? And I try and socialize with people. D, what's going on? How's your, what are you doing? What games are you playing these days? And they're like, Tom, we're already 5 minutes into our meeting time, right? I know that of myself. So usually I plan for that, and I plan 10 minutes of like breaking the ice time when it comes to meetings. 10 minutes of chit chat where I kind of say, hey, how you doing? Well, okay, we're into our meeting now. That chit chat time is done, right? We've broken the ice. We're not just hunters gathering around a fire and saying, I see you, kind of stuff. We've done all that chiming in now. Now we can actually get to the work, right? So that's what we do here in our project timeline. The deliverable for phase 1 for this engagement phase is a proposal document, right? So let's talk about this proposal document. Normally in real life, I would go to D and say, D, what do you think about this? he's my client. Do you agree? And if he agrees, right, I want to get as much money down as possible, right? I want to get at least 25 to 35% here in this phase. And my second phase, I want to get at least 50% together, right? Now, if you talk to Rich will say, I don't know, man, if I get 30%, I'm lucky, right? But I'm of the mind, the more you get up front, the more commitment the customer has, and it's how you sell it on this particular case right here. I try and get as much down as I can. Your planning phase, where you have your kickoff meeting with your team. You kind of come together, and now you're having your first kickoff meeting. You're going to spend 3-4 hours together. That's of that 40 hours that you're allocating on your team. And you're going to be talking about your project. When are you going to get it done? What days of the week are you going to meet together? Is it going to be every day? Is it going to be only one day? Can you meet remotely with Hangouts? As an example, how can you? What ways are you going to meet to get it done? Maybe you need some research as well. Like, I'm putting together a site. I want to maybe look at other sites, like I just did with you with Challenge and with other ones, right? To see if there's some pieces of the other site you want to put together to form your prototype. And you're going to do competitive analysis, what we normally do when we say, well, how does our industry, like our company or whatever, the people that are using the website, how are they competitive with other people? What are their differentiators? For you, you don't need to do that right now. Then you come up with your initial concept. This is what you're going to do 2 weeks from now. So you have to have your initial concept as a deliverable 2 weeks from now. Tell me what you're doing, right? Who are your partners? And by next week, like I said before in the first video, if you're doing something custom, something that I haven't listed, right? You're going to talk about some design options. Here are some wireframes. Here's some things I'm thinking about. What do you think, right? And these are kind of initial ideas of what the site is going to look like. You're going to decide on your site structure. How you're going to start, structuring your files and your folders. You can always start doing that kind of stuff by the time you do your concept. You're going to have wireframes, mock-ups, maybe some things of what the thing will look like, and you're going to have adhere to a project schedule, right? At the end of the day, the deliverable for the planning phase is this project brief, and normally we take the project brief back to the customer to say, hey, after our initial talk with a proposal, you accepted our proposal, we've got our project brief, this is what the timeline is going to be, this is when we're going to talk to you, meet with you, do you agree? And if upon approval, you get your another deposit, and now you're right into your build phase. When you're in the build phase, just from a timing perspective, engagement phase would be 1 part, planning phase, 2 parts roughly. Build phase, 3 parts, right? So, 3 times as much in terms of time as engagement phase typically for your build phase, if not more, sometimes 3 or 4 parts long. You build out your templates. You decide your database setup for Mongo, as an example. You develop your code base. That could take a while, especially if you don't know how to do something, right? There might be research involved, and what we normally do is charge the customer for the research, right? Like, even though you might say, well, wait a minute, but you don't know how to do it, how can you charge a customer? But the reality is, everything I do is custom work, right? So there's going to be something I don't know how to do or haven't done, right? So I'm going to, estimate how much it's going to take to figure it out. And I come up with a number, right? Like I said, an estimate. You're going to start creating your pages and your views. You're adding your content. And by the way, if the customer doesn't have content, that's a side project. That's not something that is part of our web development build, typically. The customer has to provide the content, the images, all that kind of stuff. If they don't, you can certainly set up another project, a separate billing that you do, where you have to you're going to have to hire a copywriter, someone who makes the content, or a photographer to take pictures, or whatever. That's a separate process. And that's, the site completion might be dependent on that stuff. But it's not something that we do as developers. It's not something that's inside the stuff we do. We're not going to say no to a project. I'm not going to say, no, I can't do that stuff. I don't write content. I don't take pictures. No. I'll accept the work. I'll find someone to do it for me, right? But, it's another piece. It's not included in my phase. It's out of scope for this project, right? It's a separate project that we're depending on, a dependency. We're going to do things like, when we have the content, we're going to proof it with the client. Hey, Mr. Customer, do you think this is right? Does this go along the lines of the stuff you've given us, and this is what we're going to put on your website? Do you agree? Before we do any kind of website stuff, we're going to test the functionality, right? We're going to see if our basic functionality is working. We're going to test the usability. It's functional, but is it performant, right? It may not be performant enough, maybe too slow, right? We're going to integrate security. And the deliverable for this one, for this phase, is a staging site, right? Where we allow the customer to go on and see our progress, right? Again, at this place, I'd probably get another deposit. So up to here, I could have as much as 75% of my money right now, right? Why? Because customers run away, customers shut down, right? And you've done all this work and you're not getting paid for it, and especially if you're working with other people, you might have a lot of sunk costs, right? So that's why you get as much money down as possible in the beginning. And I'm not telling you that, I'm not going to tell you that I haven't got 100% down before I start. I've done that too, right? But that's with people that I really know. All right, deployment phase. This, although it's one phase, it usually is two parts. Part one is when you have you kind of decide to cut over on a Friday night, and then you have a dead drop date of Monday. So if you can't do it on Friday for whatever reason, you tell the customer that it could be I've scheduled it for Friday, but I might have if I have any problems. Worst case, Monday we're deploying, right? And the reason for that is we want to give ourselves a bit of slack in terms of any kind of possibilities that come up, right? So that's when we actually deploy to the live site. It doesn't mean you're done. This is just phase one of a mini phase one of deployment, right? You're going to migrate your database. You're going to migrate the site. You're going to integrate their email. You're going to do a soft launch to make sure that the site's working properly. You're going to do some quality testing. You're going to do some performance testing. You're going to do some, you're going to identify and prioritize any kind of issues that arise, right? And refine the site with the customer together, working with the customer to make sure that it's what he wants, right? And then finally, at the end of the day, set up some analytics to see how it's performing, how it's working, how many people are visiting, and so on, right? Finally, you're going to get some client approval to go into project closeout, right? When you go to project closeout, this is where you would promote the site, do more advanced search engine optimization. Maybe you're going to hire an SEO company to do it for you, right? Because that's all they do, right? G-Shift comes to mind here in Barrie. That's all they do, SEO, right? So why would I do it if they could do it for me, right? And if that's their hallmark, they do pretty well, right? They also do things like how to connect to social media. We might also have things like client training involved. Like if I create an incident management database, I got to train my client to know how to use it. How do I log in? What does this dashboard look like? I might have a whole separate document on a training, from a training perspective on how to do that. Or maybe it's going to be built out that there's training hours involved. There could be or there could not be, depending on your proposal, right? There's going to be also a time where I ask for client feedback. Hey, tell me how I did. Did I do really well? Did I really suck at this one? Did it take too long? Which part did you like? Which part did you not like? Could I have improved something? Then finally, there's going to be some sales lead generation because you're always working with the client, right? You're going to talk to the client and say, well, if you really liked it, I'm never too busy for one of your referrals, this standard line that salespeople give you, right? And hopefully you're going to get more referrals for the next sale because let's face it, we want to keep everything hopping, from a business perspective, right? We have a lessons learned meeting where we talked about things like and I hate to say this way, a post-mortem, which means like, hey, how did it go? What did we learn from this one? Where do we make our mistakes? Where do we have our cost overruns? How do we estimate these sections? Do we go under our estimate, over our estimate? What do we do, right? And then finally, the final deliverable here is a final style guide that you're going to give to the customer because 6 months from now, on the roadmap, we're going to talk about future roadmap planning with the customer. You're going to say, hey, Mr. Customer, when can I come back? Because we built a website for you, but there's other features we can add to it. Or every so often, 6 months, a year, we can refresh your site, right? Don't let it go. It's the stuff you do after the build that's just as important as the stuff you do during the build. And plus support and maintenance. It might be support and maintenance costs from a hosting perspective. Anyways, after that, you get your final client approval and final monies, right? And this is one of the most challenging times to get paid, because the client can go, it's not done. So that's why you have to have a really good document in the beginning. The proposal document and the project brief are really your friends because they're the things that you can go to. No. We said we were going to do A, B, C, D. We did A, B, C, D. We didn't do E because E wasn't included in our document. It wasn't in scope. One thing that I haven't mentioned, I didn't talk about this in class, is there should be also a change management process in here. What if, I have a client, D comes to me, he's my client, he says, hey Tom, you know what? I was thinking, I want to add this for this build. Hold on. We're right in the middle of our process, and you're adding another requirement? Yeah, because we need it. I have a, you know what, I was thinking about it. I really want this in for this build. Okay, D, no problem. I'll do it for you. But you got to fill out this paper. It's a change management request form. You're going to approve that my project schedule is going to change, that I'm going to add in another $1,000 worth of costs for your little project that you want me to do, right? And my deadline is going to shift because now I have to add all these requirements up front, right? The reason why we do that is because we don't do things for free, you know? And you know what it is? The clients, when they build something, I told you guys before maybe, they get the case of the might as wells. Well, you know what? We're building a site, might as well add animation. Well, hold on. Animation? What are you talking about here, right? What kind of animation? Well, might as well add custom graphics. What? Custom graphics? Do you not have, you know, can you do our logo for us? No, I'm not in the business of doing logos. I can get someone to do it for you, certainly, and charge you a premium, right, for doing that. Or I can hook you up with somebody else. But that's not what I do, right? We do website development. Questions around this? I wanted to show you this because it goes hand in hand with your final project. I know Jarrett is big on this stuff. He's been hammering you guys, the people who are in Jarrett's project class, for this. It's got to tie in somehow, and this is the tie-in for you guys, okay? Along these phases, and specifically for web projects, okay? Any questions around this? It's something that should be helping you as opposed to you know, hurting you. This is, I want you to estimate. I want you to give an idea, and I would like you to know, in best case scenario, your planned versus actual hours. Here's my planned number of hours that I had. Here's my actual number of hours that I really did spend, right? And you can see when you work this out with your partners, if there's 3 of you, how long you think it's going to take you. And I guarantee you it's going to be around, give or take, 60 hours for the easiest one, okay, with all this detail that I'm asking you about. Questions around this, please. There must be someone who has some kind of comment or question or concern even, right? Okay. Moving on. I'm going to stop recording now for this one because I want to do a little bit of a code school video here, and I can't record the code school video because it's not mine, and I'm not going to put it on YouTube. But I'm going to direct you to where I'm going to go so you guys know where to go for this one. I'm going to go to this one here. It's AngularJS. So join me here on AngularJS. And we're going to go to Learn, and we're going to go to this free course. Now, unfortunately, I've already done it, so it's taking me to level 1. But I'm going to go, where you want to go is here. I have to clear my cookies or whatever to do that. But it's really under Shaping Up with AngularJS, not this level 1 stuff. Okay, that's where it is. This is the link. So campuscodeschool.com, and I got that from going to angularjs.org, hitting on Learn, and going to free course. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video now, and I'm going to do a little bit of a video on this free course and talk about it a little bit.